I'm so dirty. Call me daddy. You're so sexy. You could be my bad girl.
Been a while since I've done 2 videos in one day, you lucky people. But here we are. It's a good idea to get out in front of things while they're still hot topics, and while I've been preferring to just limit it to 1 video a day, sometimes you need to do something else. So the Twitter sphere, the atheist skeptic sort of sphere, the great debate community and so on, is all of a flutter at the moment because the European Court of Human Rights has, so everyone seems to be saying, ruled that you're not allowed to call Muhammed a paedophile. And given that Muhammed entered into a marriage with Aisha, who was 6 at the time, and rogered her senseless when she was 9, this would indeed seem to fit the definition of the word as people understand it in common parlance. But something about this didn't quite sit right to me, so I had a suspicious, and I went and checked into the ECHR ruling, which I'll link below provided I remember. If you're watching somewhere other than YouTube, the link may not appear below. Sometimes it doesn't seem to pass on to other channels and things, but if you go back to the YouTube and find it, you should be able to find the link, or just go to the ECHR site and you should find it. It's something like ES versus Austria, I think. Anyway, I went through the ruling. Now, it's often the job of courts to be pedants, whether it's pedants about language or whatever else, meanings of terms. You know, these things often have specific legal connotations and meanings and so on, and the ECHR is also dealing with things across various language barriers where the nuances of terms may not necessarily translate 100% into another language, but they're still called upon to make rulings. And Europe as a whole is a place where you do have the right to free speech. Individual member nations, such as Britain, don't necessarily enshrine this right, but the European Union does. So there's a conflict there immediately, and people are worried about this being essentially a secular anti-blasphemy law and so on. But if you look into the ruling itself, it does spend a great deal of time talking about context. So it wasn't necessarily the statement by itself, but the context in which it occurred that made the difference. That's one part, so we shouldn't be completely screaming and bashing our heads in at the thought of this being a blasphemy law when a lot of it's down to context, and this was a very right-wing context and within other materials and so on, so you have to take it as a contribution to a whole of a far-right argument that was being made at the time. Even so, this is still concerning. You know, the far right should have the right to spread their ideas as much as anyone else should in a free society. But then the second part is that they're taking a very particular meaning of the term paedophile. They're taking paedophile to mean a general predilection and attraction to children, a sexual interest that is overridingly towards children rather than anybody else. While Muhammad is a paedophile in a colloquial sense, in this legal sense, in this psychological sense, perhaps he wasn't. His primary interest wasn't in children. Culture was different at the time. Not that I think that's a valid excuse or one that Muslims should be making. But yeah, this wasn't a pattern of behaviour so far as we're able to tell. His other wives and so on were all of age. It's just Aisha that's the exception. So if you're being a pedant, you can't say that he was a paedophile, in that this wasn't his overriding psychological fetish, his aberration, his main centre of concern. He may have done it, but that doesn't mean he was a paedophile. I know that's hard to wrap your head around, so let me try and put it in a modern context so that you might kind of understand where they're coming from. Say that you're 17 in a state where the age of consent is 16, and at a party you hook up with someone you think is 16 and you fuck them, and it turns out later that they're 15, you know, but they looked mature, they acted mature, they told you they were 16, whatever. Is that person then a paedophile? You've had one instance where you've had sex with someone underage who is legally considered a child, but that's not what you're attracted to. You're attracted to sexually mature, at least in appearance, people. This one incident doesn't mark out a pattern of behaviour where you are attracted to and predatory towards children. And that's the distinction that they're making, that for all that he did do this thing, and for all that thing was acceptable in this society at the time, it cannot be characterised as paedophilia. It's a fine divide to make, but it has some substance. I don't think it does colloquially. I don't think this should have gone to court. I don't think the ruling should have gone this way, but the argument is valid taken in and of itself. So you can't call Muhammed a paedophile, but this is exactly what people are going to do, even more so now, because that's what happens when you make these kind of rulings. But if you're feeling a little cautious, you can instead say he was a child rapist, or just he fucked a child, and you'll convey pretty much the same thing without falling afoul of the pedantry of the law. And knowing is half the battle. Zang. It's been called misogynistic, racist, a hate group, reactionary. It's been blamed for Trump, for keeping women out of games and technology. None of this is true. If you want the real story, then you need to buy Inside Gamergate.
The gallows is cold and the gibbet is lonely. We'll make things hard for you here. The gallows is cold and the gibbet is lonely. We'll make things hard for you, Joni, my dear.
This is horrible what happened today. See, I don't like I have, okay, like a lot of you, I hate a lot, you know? But I hate with style and creativity. Yeah!